Northern Montana, December 1884. The blizzard hit without warning, transforming the late afternoon sky from pearl gray to a savage white nothing in the space of minutes. Victoria Oakley gripped the reins tighter, her gloved hands nearly frozen despite the thick wool. At 22, she'd seen Montana winters before, but nothing like this, not alone on the open road with night falling and temperatures plummeting. "Steady, Maple," she murmured to her mare, the words instantly swallowed by the howling wind. "We'll find shelter." Victoria had been raised to believe that a proper woman never traveled alone, especially through wild country. But propriety had stopped mattering 3 weeks ago when her father's letter arrived in Boston with news of his worsening consumption. The railroad had taken her as far as Helena, but the last 50 miles to their homestead required overland travel, a journey she'd insisted on making despite the station master's warnings about the gathering storm. Now, as visibility dropped to mere feet, Victoria admitted her fatal flaw, the stubborn independence that had always driven her father to distraction. "Too headstrong for your own good," he'd say, though the pride in his eyes had contradicted his words. That same trait had propelled her through medical school against society's expectations, and now might cost her life on this frozen road. Through the curtain of snow, a dark shape materialized, too angular to be natural, a building. Victoria steered Maple toward it, praying it wasn't abandoned. As they drew closer, she made out the silhouette of a modest cabin with a larger structure behind it, perhaps a barn. No lamplight shone from within, but a thin trail of smoke rose from the chimney. She guided her horse to the hitching post and dismounted, her legs nearly buckling after hours in the saddle. Victoria pounded on the door with a frozen fist, each second stretching impossibly as the wind cut through her wool coat. Just as she raised her hand to knock again, the door swung open. "Good Lord, woman, get inside before you freeze solid." The man who ushered her in was tall and broad-shouldered, his face youthful despite the weathered quality that marked all who survived the Montana elements. He couldn't be much older than 25, with clear blue eyes that assessed her quickly. "Thank you," Victoria managed through chattering teeth. "My horse." "I'll see to your mare. You get near that fire." He disappeared into the storm before she could respond, leaving Victoria to absorb her surroundings. The cabin was small but tidy, dominated by a stone fireplace where flames danced over half-consumed logs. A desk in one corner held neat stacks of papers. The furnishings were simple but solid, a man's domain, with no feminine touches to soften the practical space. When he returned minutes later, snow melting on his shoulders, Victoria had removed her outer garments but still shivered uncontrollably. "Your horse is settled in the barn with mine. She'll weather the night comfortably." He hung his coat on a peg by the door. "I'm Noah Forrester. This is my ranch." Victoria Oakley. She extended her hand, a gesture that seemed ridiculous given her current state, but ingrained Boston manners died hard. "I apologize for intruding. I was trying to reach my father's homestead when the storm overtook me." Noah's handshake was firm, his palm calloused. "Oakley, Charles Oakley's daughter." "The doctor from back east. You know my father." Everyone within 50 miles knows Doc Oakley. Noah's expression softened, and we all heard he sent for his daughter when his health turned. Victoria felt tears threatening. "Then you understand why I couldn't wait out the storm in Helena." "I understand, but it doesn't make it less foolhardy." His tone held no judgment, just matter-of-fact assessment. "You're 2 days' ride from your father's place, in good conditions. In this," he gestured toward the window where snow had already accumulated halfway up the glass, "you wouldn't have lasted the night." Have you seen him recently?" Noah hesitated. 3 days ago. "He's holding his own, Miss Oakley." The careful phrasing told Victoria more than his words. As a doctor, she recognized when someone was softening the truth about a patient's condition. "Please call me Victoria." She moved closer to the fire, holding her hands toward the flames. "I need to reach him as soon as possible." "Not until this storm breaks." "Might be tomorrow, might be 3 days from now." Noah moved to a cupboard and retrieved 2 cups. "Coffee, it's fresh made." "Thank you, I don't suppose you have tea." A small smile touched his lips. "Not unless you brought some in those saddlebags, Boston." The nickname should have irritated her, but something in his tone, teasing rather than dismissive, made Victoria smile despite her worries. "Coffee will be fine." "Black, please." As Noah poured the steaming liquid, Victoria noticed how his flannel shirt stretched across broad shoulders that spoke of hard physical labor. His movements were efficient, economical, nothing wasted, a man who'd learned to conserve energy in a land that demanded much and forgave little. "You live here alone?" she asked, accepting the cup he offered. "Just me and about 200 head of cattle." Noah settled into a chair across from her. "Ranch hands bunk in the bunkhouse during the season, but they've gone to winter with their families. I keep a small crew year-round, but they're in town getting supplies. Should have been back yesterday. They're caught in the storm, too." He nodded. "They'll hole up in Helena until it passes. Jeb's been foreman here 15 years. He knows better than to risk the journey." Unlike me, Victoria thought, taking a sip of the strong coffee. "How far is town from here?" "Helena's 30 miles southeast. There's a smaller settlement, Pinewood, about 15 miles west, but it's little more than a general store and saloon." Victoria realized with a jolt that she was completely alone with this stranger, a situation that would have scandalized her Boston acquaintances. "Out here, though, survival trumped propriety. I should try to build up this fire," she said, setting down her cup. "It's getting colder." Noah watched her with something like amusement. "The fire's fine. And this is my house, in case you forgot." "I haven't forgotten, Victoria hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden. Building fires isn't women's work out here. It's whoever's closest work." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Your father told me you're a doctor, too." The change of subject caught her off guard. "Yes, I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania last year." "Must have been difficult." "It was. Why do it?" Victoria studied him, trying to determine if the question held the usual skepticism she encountered from men. But his expression showed only genuine curiosity. "Because I wanted to help people, and because everyone told me I couldn't." She smiled slightly. "I've never been good at accepting limitations others try to impose." Noah nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Your father's the same way. Came out here when this was still territory, not state. Built that homestead himself despite knowing nothing about frontier life." "That sounds like him." Victoria's throat tightened. "He wrote that his consumption has worsened." "It has." Noah didn't soften the truth this time, "but he's still seeing patients when he can. Man's too stubborn to stop." "Another family trait," Victoria admitted. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the window panes. Noah rose and moved to the fireplace, adding another log. "You'll stay here tonight," he said, not a question but a statement of fact. "I'll take the chair, you can have the bed." "I couldn't possibly." "You can and will." His tone brooked no argument, "unless you prefer freezing to death from misplaced propriety." Victoria flushed. "I was going to suggest I take the chair." "You're significantly taller." A smile cracked his serious expression. "True enough, but my mother would haunt me from the grave if I let a woman sleep in a chair while I took the bed." "Then we're at an impasse, Mr. Forrester." "Noah," he corrected. "And I'm afraid I have to insist. Doctor or not, you look half frozen and exhausted. The bed's in that alcove." He nodded toward a curtained area. "I'll stay by the fire and keep it stoked through the night." Victoria wanted to argue further, but found herself stifling a yawn. The warmth of the cabin and the day's ordeal were catching up with her. "Very well, Noah, but only because arguing further would prove me ungrateful for your hospitality." His smile widened. "Has anyone ever told you you're as diplomatic as a senator?" "I'll take that as a compliment, though I've met several senators who couldn't negotiate their way out of a paper bag." Noah laughed, the sound unexpectedly rich in the small cabin. It transformed his face, softening the weathered lines and revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "You're nothing like I expected, Victoria from Boston." "And what did you expect?" "Someone delicate, frightened of the frontier. Looking down on everything west of the Mississippi." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "I may be from Boston, but I'm Charles Oakley's daughter. He taught me to judge people by their character, not their geography." "Good man, your father." Noah's expression grew serious again. "He saved my life 3 years ago when a stallion threw me and cracked 2 ribs into my lung. Rode through a thunderstorm to get to me." "That sounds like him too." Victoria felt her eyes growing heavy. I should retire before I fall asleep in this chair. Noah nodded. There's water in the pitcher by the bed if you need it. I'll wake you if the storm breaks early. Victoria rose, gathering her saddlebags. Thank you, Noah, for everything. As she disappeared behind the curtain, Noah stared into the fire, thinking that Charles Oakley had failed to mention just how remarkable his daughter was. He'd spoken of her accomplishments with fatherly pride, but he'd never mentioned her eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, or the determined set of her chin, or how she carried herself with quiet confidence that had nothing to do with Eastern refinement and everything to do with inner strength. Noah had long ago decided the frontier was no place for love. In a land where nature could kill you as easily as outlaws, attachments were liabilities. He'd built his ranch through single-minded focus, keeping emotional entanglements at arm's length. But for the first time in years, he felt that conviction waver, all because a stubborn doctor's daughter had appeared on his doorstep in a blizzard. He shook his head, banishing the thought. Victoria Oakley wasn't here to stay. Once the storm cleared, she'd ride to her father's homestead and eventually return east where she belonged. Getting attached would be pointless. Still, as the wind howled outside and snow piled against the windows, Noah couldn't help but wonder what it might be like to have someone to share these long winter nights, someone with quick wit and gold-flecked eyes who wasn't afraid of the frontier's challenges. Dawn arrived with unnatural stillness. Victoria woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Through the small window near the bed, she saw nothing but white, pristine and blinding in the early light. She dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, now dry after hanging near the fire overnight. When she emerged from behind the curtain, she found Noah already awake, cooking something that smelled wonderfully like bacon. Good morning. He nodded toward the window. Storm broke about an hour ago. How much snow did we get? Victoria asked, coming to stand beside him at the stove. 3 feet, give or take. Drifts higher in some places. Victoria's heart sank. Will I be able to reach my father today? Not a chance. Noah transferred bacon to a plate. Even if you could navigate the drifts, which you can't, the temperature's well below zero. You'd freeze before you made it 5 miles. I can't just sit here while my father. Your father would be the first to tell you not to risk your life unnecessarily. Noah's voice remained gentle but firm. I know you're worried about him, but getting yourself killed won't help. Victoria knew he was right, but acceptance didn't come easily. How long before the roads are passable? Depends. If the sun stays out, maybe tomorrow or the next day. If we get another storm, he shrugged, could be longer. I can't wait that long. Victoria paced the small room. There must be something we can do. Noah watched her for a moment. There might be a way. I have snowshoes. If we leave at first light tomorrow, we could make it to your father's place by nightfall. Wait, you don't think I'd let you go alone, do you? Even with snowshoes, it's dangerous territory after a storm like this. Drifts can hide deadfalls, crevices, and that's assuming the weather holds. Victoria wanted to argue that she didn't need an escort, but practicality won out. Thank you, I'd be grateful for your guidance. Noah nodded, satisfied. Today we prepare. You'll need proper clothes. Those fancy Eastern boots won't last an hour in deep snow. I have some spare gear that might work. I'm not exactly built like a rancher, Victoria pointed out, glancing pointedly at his broad shoulders. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I keep supplies for all sorts of emergencies. Previous owner's wife left some things behind when they moved back east. Couldn't handle the isolation. There was something in his tone when he said isolation that caught Victoria's attention, not bitterness exactly, but resignation, as if solitude were an inevitable condition of frontier life. Many find the isolation difficult, she said carefully. My father writes that it's the hardest adjustment for most settlers. Your father adapted well enough. He had my mother for companionship, at least until she died. Victoria accepted the plate Noah offered. And he's always been comfortable with his own thoughts. As am I. Noah sat across from her with his own breakfast. Ranch work doesn't leave much time for loneliness. Is that why you chose it? To stay busy. Noah considered the question longer than she expected. Partly, mostly I wanted land of my own, something that couldn't be taken away. What about family? Do you have siblings? Had a brother. He died at Antietam. Noah's voice was matter of fact, but Victoria noticed how his knuckles whitened around his fork. Parents passed within a year of each other after that. I came west when the war ended. I'm sorry about your brother. Noah nodded acknowledgement. Your father mentioned you lost your mother young. I was 12, influenza. Victoria took a bite of bacon to hide the emotion that still surfaced when she spoke of her mother. It's why I became a doctor. I couldn't save her, but I thought perhaps I could save others. Noble reason. Not entirely. There's selfishness in it too, wanting to feel I have some control over death. Noah's eyes met hers with unexpected understanding. Nothing selfish about wanting to push back against what takes our loved ones. That's just being human. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of shared experience despite their different backgrounds. Both had known loss, both had chosen paths that allowed them some measure of control in an uncontrollable world. The moment broke when Noah stood, gathering their empty plates. We should get started on preparations, if we're leaving at dawn tomorrow. The day passed in focused activity. Noah taught Victoria how to use snowshoes, practicing in the cleared area near the barn. He found her clothes that would withstand the journey, wool trousers that had belonged to the previous owner's wife, extra layers of undergarments, a fur-lined coat, and boots stuffed with rabbit fur for insulation. "You'll look more trapper than Boston Doctor," he commented as she tried on the oversized coat. "Fashion concerns me less than frostbite," Victoria replied, though she couldn't help laughing at her reflection in the small mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the proper physician who had left Boston 3 weeks earlier. By late afternoon, they had packed provisions, checked and double-checked their gear, and fed and watered the horses. Though they wouldn't be riding, horses couldn't navigate the deep snow effectively. Noah insisted on ensuring the animals' comfort during their absence. "You care deeply for your animals," Victoria observed as he spread extra hay for Maple. "They depend on me," Noah said simply. "Out here, that creates an obligation." "Is that why you took me in during the storm? Obligation?" Noah paused, pitchfork in hand. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," Victoria countered. "Many would have seen a woman traveling alone as suspicious or troublesome." "Are you suspicious or troublesome?" Victoria smiled. "Probably both by frontier standards." "Frontier standards aren't as narrow as you might think." Noah resumed his work. "Out here, people are judged by what they contribute, not where they came from or whether they fit some arbitrary notion of propriety." "Is that why you came west? To escape those notions?" Noah considered this, partly. After the war, everything back east felt confined, too many expectations, too many reminders. He gestured to the vast whiteness visible through the barn door. "Here there's room to breathe." "And room to be alone," Victoria added quietly. "That too," Noah met her gaze, "though I'm finding that solitude isn't always preferable to good company." The compliment, unexpected and unadorned, warmed Victoria more than she cared to admit. She'd encountered men in Boston who spoke flattering words with practiced ease, but Noah's simple statement carried more genuine appreciation than all their elaborate courtship language. "We should return to the cabin," she said, suddenly conscious of the deepening afternoon shadows. "It's getting colder." Noah nodded, setting down the pitchfork. "I need to show you how to use the compass and map before dark. If we get separated tomorrow for any reason, you'll need to know how to find your way." The evening passed with Noah spreading maps on the table, showing Victoria landmarks and explaining how to navigate using the stars if the compass was lost. As the oil lamp cast a warm glow over the cabin, Victoria found herself watching Noah's hands, strong, capable hands that moved with precision across the paper, tracing routes and marking potential hazards. "You'd have made an excellent teacher," she commented as he demonstrated how to estimate distance using thumb measurements. He looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "Never thought about teaching. Just picked these things up to stay alive." "That's often the best qualification for teaching, practical experience rather than theoretical knowledge." "Is that how you teach medicine, practical experience?" Victoria shook her head. "I haven't had the opportunity to teach yet. Women physicians are still fighting for recognition, let alone teaching positions. Seems foolish to waste knowledge based on who carries it." Noah folded the map. Your father says you graduated at the top of your class. He exaggerates. I was third. Out of how many? 17. Noah raised an eyebrow. That's not exaggeration, that's pride. And well placed from what I've seen. Victoria felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. You've known me barely a day, Mr. Forrester, hardly long enough to form judgments about my medical abilities. I'm not judging your medicine. I'm judging your character. He leaned back in his chair. You rode into a blizzard to reach your ailing father. You've adapted to frontier conditions without complaint. You're learning survival skills with the same focus I imagine you applied to your studies. His blue eyes held hers. Character shows quickly in challenging circumstances. Victoria hadn't expected such insight from a rancher, and her surprise must have shown on her face. You're thinking I'm just a simple cowboy who shouldn't be so perceptive, Noah said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Not at all, Victoria protested, though it wasn't entirely untrue. I'm just not accustomed to being seen so clearly by someone I've just met. Frontier life teaches quick assessment. Misjudging a person out here can get you killed. And what's your assessment of me? Noah studied her for a moment. That you're stronger than you look, that you care deeply about your father, that you're used to fighting for respect. He paused. And that you're probably planning to return east once your father recovers. The last observation caught Victoria off guard. She had indeed assumed she would return to Boston eventually, but hearing Noah state it so matter-of-factly made her realize she hadn't actually decided anything. I haven't thought that far ahead, she admitted. My only concern has been reaching my father. A sensible approach, Noah stood, stretching his tall frame. We should get some sleep. Dawn comes early, and we have a difficult journey ahead. Once again, Victoria took the bed, while Noah settled in the chair by the fire. As she lay in the darkness listening to the occasional pop and crack of burning wood, Victoria found her thoughts turning not to tomorrow's journey or even to her father, but to the man sleeping just beyond the curtain, a man who had upended her expectations of frontier dwellers with his intelligence, perception, and quiet strength. She'd come west prepared to find her father and bring him back to civilization for proper medical care. She hadn't prepared to find someone like Noah Forrester, who made her question whether civilization truly offered more than this wild, demanding land with its direct, honest inhabitants. Sleep claimed her eventually, but her dreams were filled with snowshoes and compasses, and a pair of clear blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to her core. They set out before sunrise, the eastern sky just beginning to lighten as they strapped on snowshoes and secured packs containing food, extra clothing, and medical supplies Victoria insisted on bringing. The temperature had risen slightly overnight, still well below freezing, but no longer the bone-cracking cold of the previous day. Stay in my tracks as much as possible, Noah instructed as they left the relative shelter of the cabin. If you start feeling too cold or need to rest, tell me immediately. Pride gets people killed out here. Victoria nodded, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of the snowshoes. Lead on, Mr. Forrester. Back to formality, Noah glanced over his shoulder with a raised eyebrow. Force of habit when receiving instructions, Victoria admitted with a small smile. Very well, Noah. Lead on. The first hours passed in concentrated silence, both of them focusing on the physical demands of navigating the transformed landscape. Victoria quickly understood why Noah had insisted on leaving at first light. Even with snowshoes, travel was exhausting, each step requiring more effort than normal walking. By mid-morning, when they stopped to rest and drink from canteens, Victoria's muscles burned with exertion, but she felt a surprising satisfaction in her body's response to the challenge. In Boston, physical strength was considered unladylike. Here, it was simply necessary. You're keeping pace better than I expected, Noah commented as they shared dried beef and hard biscuits. Thank you, I think. Victoria flexed her gloved hands to keep circulation flowing. How much farther? We've covered about 8 miles, another 12 or so to go. Noah surveyed the terrain ahead. The hardest part comes after midday when we hit the ridge. It's steeper, and the snow will be deeper on the north face. Victoria nodded, absorbing the information without revealing her growing fatigue. Tell me about this area. How long have you had your ranch? 5 years, bought it from a man returning east after his wife decided Montana winters weren't to her liking. Noah repacked the food carefully. The previous owner had started a decent herd, but the real value was in the land, good water access, natural boundaries to help contain cattle, enough timber for building. And you manage it alone. I have 3 full-time hands during the main season, plus extra help during roundup and branding. Winters I keep just the foreman and one other man. Noah adjusted his pack. Your father stops by every few months, checks on everyone's health. He's well respected around these parts. He never mentioned making regular visits to local ranches in his letters. Probably didn't think to mention it. It's just what he does. Noah stood, offering Victoria a hand up, ready to continue. She accepted his hand, noticing how easily he pulled her to her feet. Ready. They resumed their journey, the silence now more comfortable than concentrated. Victoria found herself watching Noah's movements, the easy rhythm of his stride, the way he constantly scanned the horizon, the occasional adjustments he made to their course based on terrain she couldn't yet read. How did you learn all this? She asked during their brief midday rest. Navigation, survival skills. Necessity mostly. Noah passed her a canteen. When I first came west, I signed on with a cattle drive heading to Montana Territory. The trail boss was a former Army scout who'd fought Indians before the war. He taught me the basics, reading weather, finding water, navigating by stars. And the rest. Trial and error, a smile touched his lips. Mostly error in the beginning. I spent one night half frozen under a pine tree because I misjudged how quickly a storm was moving in. That teaches you faster than any book learning. Victoria thought of her own education, years in classrooms and hospitals, learning from books and professors before ever treating a patient independently. Different paths to knowledge, each with their own merit. We should move, Noah said, standing, storm clouds gathering to the northwest. Victoria followed his gaze to the distant horizon, where dark clouds were indeed forming. Will we outrun it? If we keep a good pace, yes, those clouds are still half a day away. He helped her adjust her pack, but I'd rather not test that theory if we can avoid it. The afternoon brought the ridge Noah had mentioned, a long, sloping rise that looked deceptively manageable until Victoria attempted to climb it. The combination of deep snow and incline made each step a struggle, and halfway up she found herself pausing frequently to catch her breath. Need to rest? Noah asked, noticing her slowing pace. Pride warred with practicality in Victoria's mind, perhaps a brief stop. They found a relatively flat spot, and Victoria sank gratefully onto a fallen log Noah cleared of snow. Her legs trembled with exertion, and she fought to control her breathing, unwilling to appear completely exhausted. Noah studied her with those perceptive blue eyes. You're doing remarkably well for someone who's never done this before. Your definition of remarkably well must include barely keeping up, Victoria said wryly. My definition includes not complaining once and pushing through obvious discomfort. Noah's expression softened. Most men I know wouldn't manage this journey as well as you are. The simple honesty of the compliment touched Victoria more deeply than she expected. Throughout her medical training, she'd grown accustomed to faint praise, impressive for a woman or surprisingly competent, considering, always with qualifications that diminished the achievement. Noah's straightforward assessment contained no such limitations. Thank you, she said simply. How much farther to the top? Another 20 minutes of climbing, then we follow the ridge for a while before descending into the valley where your father's homestead lies. Noah gazed at the darkening northwestern sky. We need to keep moving. The remainder of the climb proved as difficult as Victoria anticipated, but Noah's steady presence just ahead of her provided motivation to continue. When they finally crested the ridge, the view took what little breath she had left, miles of snow-covered wilderness stretching in all directions, broken only by distant mountains and the occasional dark smudge of pine forests. It's magnificent, she murmured. Worth the climb? Noah asked, standing beside her. Absolutely. Victoria turned to him, struck by how the winter light emphasized the angles of his face. With his broad shoulders and the vast landscape behind him, he seemed perfectly at home in this wild place, not conquering it but belonging to it. The moment stretched between them, quiet and charged with something Victoria wasn't ready to name. Noah broke it first, glancing again at the approaching storm. We should continue, daylight's wasting. The journey along the ridgeline proved easier than the climb, allowing Victoria to recover some strength. As they walked, Noah pointed out landmarks, a distinctive outcropping of rock, a bend in a frozen creek, the distant smoke from what he identified as her father's chimney. "We'll make it before dark," he assured her. "Though that storm's moving faster than I'd like." Victoria studied the approaching clouds with growing concern. Will it be as severe as yesterday's blizzard? "Hard to say, might just clip us with some snow, might be worse." Noah adjusted his course slightly. "Either way, we'll reach your father's place first." The descent from the ridge presented its own challenges, the deep snow creating treacherous footing even with snowshoes. Twice Victoria nearly fell, saved only by Noah's quick reactions, his strong hand catching her elbow, steadying her before she could tumble down the slope. "Sorry," she said after the second near fall. "I'm slowing us down." "Better slow than injured," Noah replied pragmatically. "We're making good time." By late afternoon, they had reached the valley floor, and Victoria could make out a small homestead nestled against a stand of pine trees a mile ahead, a cabin similar to Noah's but with a smaller outbuilding beside it. "That's it," she said, energy renewed by the sight of her destination. "My father's place." Noah nodded. About another half hour. The snow's not as deep here in the valley. They covered the remaining distance with renewed purpose, Victoria's fatigue temporarily forgotten in her anticipation of seeing her father. As they approached the cabin, however, something seemed wrong. No smoke rose from the chimney despite the bitter cold, and no light shone from the windows though dusk was falling. Noah noticed it too, his pace quickening. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his tone suddenly all business. They reached the cabin door, which stood slightly ajar, another worrying sign. Noah pushed it open cautiously, one hand moving to the pistol Victoria hadn't realized he carried. The interior was cold and dim, the fireplace holding nothing but gray ashes. A quick scan revealed the cabin was empty, though signs of habitation were everywhere: dishes on the table, books open on a chair, a half-written letter on a small desk. "He's not here," Victoria said, fighting rising panic. Where could he be in this weather? Noah moved through the small space with efficiency, checking the bedroom and returning with a troubled expression. "His coat and boots are gone, but his medical bag is still here." He pointed to the black leather satchel on a shelf. Whatever made him leave, it wasn't a medical call. Victoria felt cold that had nothing to do with the unheated cabin. Could he have gone for supplies? Possible but unlikely with a storm approaching. "Your father knows better." Noah examined the cold ashes in the fireplace. "Fire's been out at least 12 hours. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the first flakes of the approaching storm. Victoria moved to the window, anxiety mounting as she watched snow begin to fall more heavily. "We need to find him," she said, turning back to Noah. "He could be lost or injured." Noah's expression was grave but controlled. "First, we need to get a fire going. If he returns while we're searching, he'll need warmth." He moved to the woodpile by the fireplace, selecting logs. "There are tracks outside, partially filled with last night's snow. Once we have a fire, I'll follow them." "We'll follow them," Victoria corrected firmly. "Victoria." "He's my father, Noah. I'm coming with you." Their eyes locked in silent argument, but something in Victoria's expression must have convinced him of her determination. "Very well," he conceded, "but we prepare properly. Another storm's coming, and we can't risk getting caught in it unprepared." They worked quickly, Noah building a fire while Victoria gathered supplies into a small pack: bandages and medicines from her father's bag, dried food from his pantry, extra matches wrapped in oilcloth. Within 20 minutes, flames crackled in the fireplace, and they were ready to depart. Outside, the snow was falling steadily now, beginning to obscure the tracks Noah had noticed. He studied them carefully before pointing west. He headed toward the tree line, not toward town. "These are from yesterday morning, I'd guess." "Before the worst of the blizzard," Victoria said, her medical mind already calculating survivability in such conditions. "If he found shelter." "Let's focus on following his trail while we still can," Noah interrupted gently, recognizing the fear beneath her clinical assessment. They set off, moving as quickly as caution allowed. The tracks led into the pine forest, becoming harder to distinguish as tree cover had prevented some of the previous day's snow from accumulating. Noah moved with the focus of an experienced tracker, occasionally kneeling to examine depressions or marks Victoria couldn't even see. He's moving with purpose, Noah commented after 20 minutes of steady progress. Not wandering or lost, he knew where he was going. That's something at least, Victoria said, though worry still gnawed her stomach. The forest grew denser, the fading daylight barely penetrating the evergreen canopy. Snow continued to fall, now beginning to accumulate on their shoulders and packs. Victoria estimated they had been searching for nearly an hour when Noah suddenly stopped, holding up a hand for silence. In the stillness, Victoria heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound that might have been chopping or hammering, coming from somewhere ahead. "That's not your father," Noah said quietly. "He's too weak for that kind of exertion." "Then who?" "Let's find out." Carefully, Noah drew his pistol, holding it ready but pointed down. "Stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run back to the cabin without argument. Understand?" Victoria nodded, her throat too dry for words. They moved forward slowly, the sound growing louder. Through the trees, Victoria could make out a small clearing and what appeared to be a crude lean-to shelter. A figure moved around it, gathering branches, too large to be her father. Noah approached the clearing's edge, watching for several moments before relaxing slightly. "It's safe," he said, holstering his pistol. "I know him." They stepped into the clearing, and the man looked up, middle-aged with a full beard and weathered face. Recognition dawned in his eyes when he saw Noah. "Forrester, what in blazes are you doing out here with a storm coming?" "Looking for Dr. Oakley," Noah replied. "This is his daughter, Victoria. Victoria, this is Eli Jensen. He traps in these parts." Jensen nodded respectfully to Victoria. "Ma'am, your father's inside the shelter. Found him yesterday morning collapsed in the snow not far from here." Victoria's heart lurched. "Is he?" "Alive," Jensen assured her quickly. "Fever's bad though, been trying to keep him warm." Victoria pushed past both men, ducking into the lean-to where her father lay wrapped in blankets and furs. His face was flushed with fever, his breathing labored. She fell to her knees beside him, medical training taking over as she assessed his condition. "Papa," she said softly, placing a hand on his hot forehead. "It's Victoria." Charles Oakley's eyes fluttered open, focusing with difficulty. "Victoria, how?" His voice trailed off in a bout of coughing. "SHH, don't try to talk." She looked up as Noah and Jensen entered the shelter. "We need to get him back to the cabin. His lungs are congested, and this cold air is making it worse." Jensen nodded, been trying to build something to pull him on, but with the snow and limited tools. "We can make a travois," Noah said, already assessing the available materials. "Victoria, can he travel?" "He has to." Victoria's voice was firm despite her fear. "The consumption has advanced, and he's developed pneumonia on top of it. He needs proper care in a warm environment." The men set to work immediately, Noah directing the construction of a simple travois using pine branches and rope from Jensen's supplies. Victoria tended to her father, giving him water and wrapping him more securely against the increasing cold. "You shouldn't have come," Charles managed between coughs. "Dangerous." "I'm exactly where I need to be," Victoria replied, her tone allowing no argument. "Save your strength, Papa, we're taking you home." Outside, the snow fell more heavily, the wind picking up force. By the time Noah and Jensen completed the travois, visibility had decreased significantly. "We need to move now," Noah said, ducking back into the shelter. "Storm's getting worse." Together, they carefully transferred Charles to the travois, securing him with blankets and furs. Noah and Jensen positioned themselves at either end, Noah at the front to pull, Jensen at the back to steady the makeshift sled. "I'll lead," Victoria said, taking the lantern Jensen had lit. "I remember the way back." No one argued, recognizing that in the deteriorating conditions, having someone focused solely on navigation was essential. They set off, moving carefully through the increasingly obscured forest, the wind driving snow into their faces. Victoria forced herself to concentrate on finding their earlier tracks, now nearly invisible under fresh snow. Behind her, she could hear her father's labored breathing and occasional cough, each sound sending fresh fear through her heart. The journey back seemed to take 3 times as long, the storm intensifying with each passing minute. By the time they finally emerged from the forest, full darkness had fallen, and the wind howled with dangerous strength. Victoria could barely make out the cabin 100 yards ahead, its windows dark rectangles against the swirling white. "Almost there," she called back encouragingly, though her own strength was failing after the day's exertions. The final stretch proved the most difficult, the open ground offering no protection from the wind's full force. When they finally reached the cabin door, Victoria nearly collapsed with relief. Inside, the fire had burned low but not out. While Noah and Jensen brought her father in, Victoria quickly added wood, coaxing the flames back to life. They settled Charles on the bed in the small bedroom, and Victoria immediately began proper medical treatment, easing his breathing with steam from boiling water, administering medicines from his own supplies. "He's severely dehydrated and the pneumonia is advanced," she told Noah quietly while Jensen prepared food in the main room. "I can treat the symptoms, but—" She couldn't finish the sentence, medical objectivity failing when the patient was her own father. Noah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "If anyone can help him, it's you." Victoria nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. "I need to keep the fever down and help clear his lungs. It will be a long night." "I'll stay with you," Noah said simply. And he did, through hours of Victoria applying cold compresses to her father's forehead, helping him drink herbal teas and medicines, monitoring his breathing and pulse. Jensen eventually fell asleep in a chair by the main fireplace, but Noah remained alert, fetching water, stoking fires, and offering quiet support when Victoria's composure threatened to crack under the weight of fear and exhaustion. Near dawn, Charles's fever finally broke, his breathing becoming less labored. Victoria, monitoring his pulse, felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "He's stabilizing," she whispered to Noah, who sat nearby. "The crisis has passed for now." "You should rest," Noah said gently. "You've been awake for nearly 24 hours. Victoria shook her head. "I need to monitor him." "Victoria," Noah's voice was firm but kind. "You can't help him if you collapse. I'll watch him while you sleep for a few hours. I promise to wake you if anything changes." Too exhausted to argue further, Victoria finally nodded. "Wake me in 3 hours, no matter what." She settled into a chair near her father's bed, intending only to close her eyes briefly. Instead, she fell immediately into deep sleep, her body surrendering to the demands she had placed on it over the past 2 days. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the small window. Victoria sat up with a start, realizing far more than 3 hours had passed. "Noah," she called, alarmed. He appeared in the doorway immediately. "Your father's better." Fevers stayed down, breathing's improved. Jensen left to check his trapline but will return later. Victoria moved quickly to her father's side, conducting her own assessment. Noah was right, Charles's color had improved, his breathing was less labored, and when she touched his forehead, his skin was cool and dry. "You should have woken me," she said, though relief outweighed irritation. "You needed the rest." "Doctor's orders," the corner of Noah's mouth lifted in a slight smile. "Your father woke briefly and agreed with my decision." "Conspiracy," Victoria muttered, but she couldn't maintain her annoyance in the face of her father's improvement. "Thank you for watching over him." "No need for thanks." Noah leaned against the doorframe, fatigue evident in his posture though he clearly had not slept. "I'll make some coffee." As he turned to leave, Victoria caught his arm. "Noah, you saved his life. If you hadn't agreed to bring me here." Noah's blue eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "You would have found a way regardless. I just made the journey less perilous." "Nevertheless," Victoria faltered, emotion suddenly tightening her throat. "Thank you." Noah covered her hand with his own, the gesture simple but comforting. "Get some more rest if you can. I'll bring food when it's ready." The next 3 days passed in a blur of medical care and cautious optimism. Charles steadily improved under Victoria's attention, regaining strength enough to sit up and eat solid food by the second day. Jensen returned with game he had trapped, ensuring fresh meat for nourishing broths. Noah proved invaluable, not only maintaining the cabin, keeping fires burning, preparing meals, melting snow for water, but also offering Victoria respite when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. She found herself watching him with increasing frequency, noting the gentleness with which he helped her father sit up, the quiet efficiency of his movements around the small cabin, the consideration he showed in anticipating needs before they were voiced. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, with her father sleeping peacefully and the worst danger past, Victoria finally allowed herself to step outside for fresh air. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a crystalline landscape under bright blue skies. She wrapped her borrowed coat tightly around herself and ventured a short distance from the cabin, filling her lungs with clean, cold air. Noah joined her moments later, offering a steaming cup, tea. Found some in your father's supplies. Thank you, Victoria accepted gratefully, the warm ceramic pleasant against her cold fingers. I needed this moment of quiet. You've earned it, Noah stood beside her, his own cup sending curls of steam into the frigid air. Your father's a fortunate man to have you as his daughter. I nearly arrived too late. But you didn't, Noah's gaze was steady. That's what matters. Victoria sipped her tea, organizing thoughts that had been crowding her mind since their journey through the storm. I've been trying to understand why he left the cabin alone, knowing his condition and with a blizzard approaching. He told me this morning while you were washing up. Noah turned to face her. A family that homesteads about 2 miles from here sent their young son with a message. The mother was having difficulty with her pregnancy. Your father couldn't refuse the call. Of course he couldn't, Victoria said softly. That's who he is. He never reached them. The storm caught him partway there and he became disoriented. If Jensen hadn't found him, Noah left the sentence unfinished. What about the woman? The pregnancy. Jensen checked on his way back yesterday. Turns out the baby decided to wait out the storm. She delivered yesterday morning with her mother-in-law's help. Both mother and child are doing well. Victoria nodded, relief mingling with renewed concern for her father. His consumption is worse than he admitted in his letters. He can't continue practicing medicine out here, not in his condition. What will you do? The question hung between them, weighted with implications beyond the immediate concern for Charles's health. I need to take him back east where he can receive proper treatment. Victoria met Noah's eyes directly. He'll resist the idea, but he has no choice if he wants to survive. When will you leave? As soon as he's strong enough to travel. Perhaps in a week if his improvement continues. Noah nodded, his expression unreadable. I should return to my ranch tomorrow. My hands may have returned from town by now, wondering where I've gone. The announcement, though logical, struck Victoria with unexpected force. She had grown accustomed to Noah's steady presence over the past days, finding comfort in his quiet strength and practical support. Of course, she said, maintaining composure despite the strange hollowness that suddenly opened within her. You've already done far more than could be expected. Your ranch needs attention. I'll check on you both in a few days, Noah added. Bring additional supplies. That's very kind but unnecessary. We'll manage. Nevertheless, I'll come. His tone brooked no argument. Victoria nodded, strangely reassured by his insistence. They stood in companionable silence for several minutes, watching the sun begin its early winter descent, the snow-covered landscape turning golden in the afternoon light. It's beautiful here, Victoria said finally. I can understand why my father loves it, despite the hardships. It's not for everyone, Noah replied. The isolation, the challenges, they require a certain temperament. Like yours, Victoria glanced at him, curious. I thought so once. Noah's gaze remained on the distant mountains. Now I'm less certain. Before Victoria could ask what he meant, a sound from inside the cabin drew their attention, Charles calling her name. They returned inside together, the moment of connection broken but not forgotten. The following morning, Noah prepared to depart. He had restocked the woodpile, repaired a loose shutter, and ensured Victoria and her father had sufficient provisions for several days. I've left instructions for your father on caring for his cabin through the rest of winter, he told Victoria as he packed his gear, though I suspect you'll be gone before the worst of it. Victoria nodded, acutely aware of Charles watching their interaction from his chair near the fire. Thank you for everything, Noah. Thank Jensen when he returns. He's the one who found your father. I will, but you're the one who brought me safely through the blizzard. Victoria hesitated, then added quietly, I wouldn't have made it without your guidance. Noah shouldered his pack, then extended his hand formally. It was my honor, Dr. Oakley. The return to her professional title felt like a deliberate distancing, and Victoria felt an irrational hurt as she shook his hand. Safe journey, Mr. Forrester. Something flickered in Noah's eyes, regret, perhaps, or unspoken words, but he simply nodded, bid goodbye to Charles, and departed, the door closing firmly behind him. Victoria watched through the window as he strapped on snowshoes and set off toward the ridge they had crossed together days earlier. Only when his figure disappeared from sight did she turn back to her father, who regarded her with unexpected perception. "Remarkable man, Forrester," Charles commented mildly. "Built that ranch from nearly nothing in 5 years." Yes, he mentioned that. Victoria busied herself tidying her father's medicines to avoid his too perceptive gaze. Did he also mention refusing 3 offers of marriage from perfectly suitable women in Helena? This caught Victoria's attention. No, he didn't. Not surprised, Noah's never been one to discuss personal matters. Charles shifted in his chair, wincing slightly at the movement. The isolation of that ranch suits him, or so he believes. What do you mean? I've treated Noah for 5 years, Victoria, seen him build something impressive through sheer determination. But I've also seen the toll that solitude takes. Charles's eyes, so like her own, held her steadily. He lost his entire family to war and illness. It's left him cautious about forming attachments. Victoria absorbed this, connecting it to Noah's earlier comment about being less certain about his suitability for isolation. Why are you telling me this, Papa? Because I saw how he looked at you when he thought no one was watching. And how you looked at him, Charles smiled gently. I may be ill, daughter, but my eyesight remains excellent. Heat rose in Victoria's cheeks. We've known each other less than a week. Some connections don't require years to form. Charles reached for her hand. Now about this plan to drag me back east. The subject changed, but Victoria's thoughts remained on Noah throughout the day, her father's observations adding complexity to her already confused feelings. 4 days passed, during which Charles continued to improve, though Victoria remained concerned about his underlying consumption. They discussed, sometimes heatedly, her insistence that he return east for treatment, with Charles finally conceding when Victoria threatened to withhold her medical expertise entirely if he remained stubborn. Blackmail using a man's daughter's medical training against him, he grumbled, but the fight had gone out of his resistance. On the afternoon of the 5th day since Noah's departure, Victoria was helping her father organize his medical journals for packing when a knock sounded at the door. Her heart quickened irrationally as she moved to answer it. Noah stood on the threshold, snow dusting his shoulders and hat, a canvas bag in one hand. As promised, he said simply. Supplies. Victoria stepped back to admit him, absurdly conscious of her appearance after days of wearing the same 2 dresses alternately. We were just discussing travel plans. Papa has agreed to return east with me. Noah nodded, setting down his burden and removing his hat. Wise decision, Doc. That cough needs proper treatment. Charles snorted from his chair. Don't encourage her, Forrester. I'm being coerced by my own flesh and blood. For your own good, Victoria and Noah said simultaneously, then exchanged surprised glances that made Charles laugh and then cough. I also brought news, Noah continued, unpacking the bag to reveal coffee, sugar, and other staples. Stagecoach comes through Pinewood in 3 days, heading east. I've arranged passage for both of you to Helena, where you can catch the train. Victoria stared at him. You arranged our travel. Seemed practical. The stage route passes within 5 miles of here, and I can take you there by sled. Noah continued unpacking as if this were a perfectly ordinary conversation, unless you had other plans. No, that's very thoughtful. Victoria struggled to reconcile this development with the formality of their parting days earlier. Thank you. Charles watched the exchange with poorly concealed interest. Most generous, Noah. I assume we'll reimburse you for the tickets. Already taken care of, Noah waved away the suggestion. Consider it payment for medical services rendered over the years. The matter appeared settled, though Victoria felt increasingly unsettled. Noah's efficiency in arranging their departure seemed to confirm that he wanted her gone from his life with minimal complication. They spent the evening discussing practical matters, what Charles should take, what could be left, who would watch over his homestead in his absence. Noah offered to check on the property periodically, an offer Charles gratefully accepted. As night fell and preparations for sleep began, Noah announced his intention to bed down in the main room rather than return to his ranch in darkness. If that's acceptable, he added, glancing at Victoria. Of course, she replied, maintaining the polite distance that had characterized their interaction since his return. I'll get blankets. Later, lying awake in the small bedroom, while her father slept soundly for the first time since her arrival, Victoria confronted the emotion she had been avoiding naming. Heartache. In less than a week, Noah Forrester had somehow become important to her in ways that defied rational explanation. The prospect of leaving Montana, leaving him, filled her with a sense of loss wholly disproportionate to their brief acquaintance. Yet what alternative existed? Her life, her career, lay in Boston. Her father needed treatment only available in established Eastern hospitals. Noah belonged here on his ranch in the wilderness he had chosen. Their worlds could not have been more separate. With this sobering thought, Victoria finally drifted into uneasy sleep. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity, sorting Charles's belongings, preparing him for travel, ensuring he had sufficient medication for the journey. Noah came and went, bringing a sled he had modified for Charles's comfort during the trip to the stagecoach stop, checking the weather forecasts with local trappers, securing their homestead against the remainder of winter. Through it all, a strange tension lingered between Victoria and Noah, not unpleasant but weighted with unspoken thoughts. They worked efficiently together, anticipating each other's needs with surprising synchronicity, yet maintained a careful distance that neither seemed willing to breach. On the evening before their departure, with Charles already asleep and preparations complete, Victoria found herself alone with Noah by the fire. The cabin was mostly packed, giving it an abandoned feel despite the warmth of the flames. "I want to thank you properly," Victoria said finally, breaking the comfortable silence, "for everything you've done, for my father, for me." Noah looked up from the fire. "No thanks needed." "Nevertheless, you have it." Victoria gathered her courage. "I also wanted to say that I've come to understand why my father loves this place so much. It's not just the landscape or the freedom. It's the people like you, who embody the best qualities of frontier life: resilience, generosity, courage." Noah studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. "You sound like you're saying goodbye." "Aren't I?" Victoria met his gaze directly. "Tomorrow we leave for the East. You remain here. That is goodbye by definition." "Is it what you want?" The question caught her off guard with its directness. "What I want? I want my father to receive the treatment he needs." "That's not what I asked." Victoria looked away, unable to maintain his intense gaze. "What I want isn't relevant. Some things are necessary regardless of personal preference." Noah was silent for so long that Victoria thought he might not respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I've spent 5 years believing isolation was my destiny, that after losing my family, attachments were too dangerous, too painful to risk again." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Then a stubborn doctor's daughter appeared during a blizzard, and in less than a week, upended everything I thought I knew about myself." Victoria's heart quickened. "Noah, let me finish." He held her gaze steadily. "I arranged your passage east because it's what your father needs, what you thought you needed. But I've been watching you these past days, Victoria. You belong here as much as your father does. You come alive in this environment in ways that surprise even you." "That doesn't change the facts," Victoria said, though her voice lacked conviction. "My father needs treatment. My career is in Boston." "Your father needs treatment, yes. But he could return afterward." Noah paused. "And doctors are needed everywhere, perhaps nowhere more than frontier communities with limited medical access." The possibility he was suggesting opened before Victoria like an unexpected vista, a life here, practicing medicine where it was desperately needed, in this wild, beautiful land. With this man whose quiet strength and integrity had so quickly come to mean everything. "Are you asking me to stay?" she whispered. "I'm asking you to consider it, to consider us." Noah's voice remained steady, but vulnerability showed in his eyes. "Not now. Take your father east, get him the treatment he needs, but afterward, consider coming back." To what exactly? Victoria needed clarity, needed to hear him say precisely what he was offering. Noah stood, moving to kneel before her chair. He took her hands in his, the gesture intimate and direct, to a partnership, a life built together. His eyes held hers with unwavering intensity. "I've spent years believing the frontier was no place for love, that survival required emotional isolation. You've shown me how wrong I was." Victoria's breath caught. "Noah, we barely know each other. We know what matters." We've seen each other at our most vulnerable, most determined. We've faced death together and prevailed. His hands tightened around hers. I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that what we've found in these few days is worth exploring further. The hope in his eyes, the earnestness of his words, broke through Victoria's carefully maintained reserve. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I will consider it, she whispered, with all my heart. Noah's smile transformed his face, erasing the worry lines that had creased his brow. That's all I ask. The journey east proceeded as planned. Charles weathered the stagecoach and subsequent train travel better than Victoria had feared, his strength bolstered by the prospect of proper treatment and perhaps by the knowledge that his daughter had found someone, worth returning to Montana for. In Boston, Victoria secured her father the best medical care available, watching with relief as new treatments arrested the progression of his consumption. She maintained her medical practice, but found herself increasingly drawn to research on frontier medicine and the unique challenges faced by isolated communities. Letters arrived regularly from Montana, Noah's precise handwriting detailing ranch developments, local news, and increasingly, his hopes for their future. Victoria read each one dozens of times, her responses growing longer and more personal as the months passed. By early autumn, Charles had recovered sufficiently to consider travel, though Victoria insisted on waiting until spring for his return journey. To her surprise, he announced his intention to sell his Boston property. I've made my decision, daughter, he said firmly. Montana is my home now. The question is, where is yours? Victoria had been asking herself the same question, with increasing frequency. Boston offered comfort, civilization, established medical practice. Montana offered challenge, purpose, and a man whose letters had become essential to her happiness. In the end, the decision came more easily than she had expected. As winter's grip on Montana began to ease the following April, a stagecoach arrived in Pinewood carrying 2 passengers, Charles Oakley, his health much improved, and his daughter Victoria, whose medical equipment filled most of their luggage. Noah was waiting as promised, standing beside a wagon rather than a sled, the warming weather having cleared most roads of snow. When Victoria descended from the stagecoach, their eyes met across the short distance, and all doubts vanished. You came back, he said simply when she reached him. I did, Victoria smiled, the months of separation falling away. I've considered your proposition thoroughly, Mr. Forrester, from all possible angles. And your conclusion, Doctor? Oakley, his voice was steady, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful hope in his eyes. Victoria reached into her coat pocket and withdrew a letter, the last she had received from him before leaving Boston. You wrote that you had begun construction on a proper clinic adjoining your ranch house, with space for a medical practice that might serve the surrounding homesteads. I did. You also mentioned that the building included living quarters, suitable for a physician who might wish to establish practice in an underserved frontier community. Noah nodded, the hint of a smile touching his lips. Correct again. Then my conclusion is this: I accept your offer of partnership, both professional and personal. Victoria held his gaze steadily. I love you, Noah Forrester. I think I have since that first night by your fire, when you saw me not as a helpless Eastern lady, but as a capable equal. The smile that spread across Noah's face was like sunrise breaking over the Montana mountains, radiant and transformative. He stepped forward, drawing her into his arms with a certainty that felt like coming home. I love you too, Victoria Oakley. Welcome home. Behind them, Charles Oakley watched with satisfaction as his daughter found in the Montana wilderness what she had never discovered in Boston's drawing rooms, a love that matched her strength, challenged her mind, and completed her heart. The journey that had begun with Victoria trying to build a fire in a Christmas blizzard had led to a far greater warmth, one that would sustain them through all the seasons to come.